Hello, good afternoon. I'm Lisa Boyle, and I'm an environmental attorney. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself because I think my history will help you to understand the connection between oil and plastics, and also give you an indication of what we're up against in this battle to prevent plastic pollution. So before I was a co-founder of Plastic Pollution Coalition, before I was an environmental prosecutor in the DA's office here in Los Angeles, before I was the director of law and policy at Heal the Bay, I was a law student at Tulane University in New Orleans. And at that time, one of my first clients was the international organization Greenpeace. And Greenpeace was one of the first environmental organizations to get interested in plastics. This was 20 years ago. I'm a little embarrassed to admit. I just went to my 20th law school reunion. So 20 years ago, Greenpeace was already looking at the terrible impacts of plastics on the environment. So Greenpeace was upset because in the natural resources building in the state of Louisiana, in Baton Rouge at the Capitol, there was a display put up by the Louisiana Chemical Association, which is like the state version of the American Chemistry Council. And this display by the Louisiana Chemistry Council was all about the wonders of plastics, especially single-use plastics, because of course those make the most money for plastic corporations because we use them and throw them away constantly. So it was all about disposable diapers and plastic forks and spoons, how great they make our lives. Well, they forgot to tell the entire story because we were right there next to the cancer corridor where all these petrochemicals are manufactured to make these products. They forgot to tell about the devastating impacts of single-use plastics on the environment and on our health. So Greenpeace just wanted to put up their own display to tell the rest of the story. So they came to me at the Environmental Law Clinic, and we decided to use the First Amendment, equal access to the public forum, because this was a state building. It was actually the regulatory body that is supposed to be protecting us from environmental harm. So we used the First Amendment and we got up our display. And it was up for a very long time because nobody could even remember how long the other display had been up. So that was my first introduction 20 years ago to the issue of plastic pollution and also to the powerful, powerful presence of petroleum in our government and how difficult it is to battle them. Because after we were successful, the petrochemical companies got very, very angry that their display was down and that the positive one about the environment was up. They were even madder when my environmental law clinic took on a plastics manufacturing company called Shintech that wanted to open in a predominantly African-American poor neighborhood in New Orleans. And we were successful in keeping that plant from opening. So, of course, the petrochemical companies gathered and tried to limit the powers of the law clinic and to try and discourage people from giving money to Tulane University. So it was a pretty big stink, and it's still ongoing, but I'm proud to say that the law clinic is still doing its good work. But it was noticed to me about the power of petroleum. And all you have to do is look at Louisiana to see a perfect example of the power of petroleum in government. In fact, just a couple of miles behind the beautiful Capitol building in Baton Rouge is the second largest refinery in the country. It's a big Exxon refinery. And lest you forget that government is owned by petroleum, all you have to do is look at this surreal, scary refinery that glows in the dark behind the Capitol building to be reminded. In fact, if you don't take oil money in Louisiana, you're not going to get elected. You won't even get a shrimp cocktail. at a reception in the Capitol. That's business. The year before I got to law school, in 1989, there was a huge explosion at that Exxon refinery that killed several people, and that wasn't enough to stop the power of petroleum. And then, as we all know, recently with the BP oil spill, we had, one of the biggest environmental disasters in the world, with that oil spill, and still petroleum owns the state and the government. It's really important to understand that petroleum is what makes up our plastic products. So we're really talking about all the same thing when we're talking about these oil companies. The CEO of Dow is the head of the American Chemistry Council, which is the lobbying group for the plastics manufacturers. And plastic is huge business, just like petroleum is huge business. In fact, in 2009, the Guinness Book of World Records named the plastic bag the #1 most ubiquitous consumer item on the planet. And that is because it is produced worldwide in a scale in the trillions. Petroleum companies are so powerful that they literally rule the world. They determine regimes when they change, and they spend trillions of dollars on marketing their products to us so that we don't question that these products are harmful. I mean, we've all seen the Jennifer Aniston Smart Water ads. They just infiltrate so that people think that it's cool and that it's necessary to walk around with a plastic water bottle. Well, in a great book called Crude World, The Violent Twilight of Oil, Peter Moss recently concluded an 8-year journey around the world to see what the real cost of petroleum production is. And here in America, we are the #1 consumer. Well, at least it was reusable. The #1 consumer of petroleum in the world. And, we were shocked by the BP oil spill, at least for a little while. But the only reason we were shocked is because we export most of the toxic impacts of oil production to other countries around the world. They do it for us. And, we were shocked to see that oil spill. But there's an oil spill happening every single day somewhere on the planet, in some amount, big or small, into rivers, into the ocean. This is happening continually. And the corollary to those oil spills is the continual spill of our plastic products made out of petroleum into the rivers and oceans of the world. So it's all linked and it's happening all the time. Globally, we make 300 million tons of plastic waste each year. 300 million tons of plastic. And tragically, this plastic is entering into our environment in an increasing rate. We're starting to learn about it, but the levels are going up. There is actually no part of the globe, no matter how remote, that isn't impacted by plastic pollution, because we're all connected by the oceans and the currents that used to move, coconut fronds or whatever. Now they're moving plastic. Fresh Kills landfill was once believed to be the largest landfill on the planet. You could see it from space. It was reopened for a little bit to let in waste from 9/11. It's just massive in New York. But now we know that is not the biggest landfill, that the biggest dumps on the planet are our oceans. So something that hasn't been mentioned today that I want to talk to you about are the raw material that makes plastic are these tiny little pellets that kind of look like polenta. And they go by the sophisticated name of nurdles. And nurdles are the little pellets, pre-production plastic, that's melted into all the different things that we use that are plastic. Well, these little pellets, they don't escape in the same way that other plastic, like our bottles and bags, escape. They escape from the factories in bad production methods and in transport to other places that use them for production. Well, these little pellets have become like sand across beaches, and they can be found in amazing quantities in such remote places as Tonga and Fiji, far from where they're made. So it's really horrible. Now, if you're starting to feel hopeless at this point, we've had so much positive talk too. I want you to remember that when I started in the DA's office, I was working on CFC issues, and we don't have CFCs now. So this is really exciting. We banned something, and the ozone hole is closing. And then think about smoking. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, there was smoking everywhere. And now, even though the tobacco lobby is just as powerful as the petroleum lobby, we've managed to ban smoking in many places. So there is hope. And I want to talk to you about some of the solutions that have worked around the planet. First of all, way back in 1977, we started with the UN coming up with international agreements to try and reduce plastic pollution. And the first of those was to ban dumping at sea. And so since 1988, this has been in effect so that ships aren't allowed to dump their waste at sea, and that even applies to small recreational vessels. But even though more than 79 countries have ratified this, it's still the problem of enforcement. And when you're on the open seas that aren't owned by any country, enforcement can be extremely difficult. And unfortunately, it's still estimated that 6.5 million tons a year of plastics come from overboard dumping. And that's only 20% of the entire plastics come from ship dumping. So the majority of the plastics come from land, 80%. So although we have this international doctrine, it's enforcement. We have to always think about enforcement. Now, getting to the land, the problem coming from land, where the majority of plastics come from, that comes to national laws, not international laws. And these laws can be very powerful, and I want to talk to you about some of them. Individual countries have enforced degradability standards, encouraged recycling, banned chemicals, banned single-use products, and required pollution controls. And some brilliant scientists, Ray and Grassley, in 1991, stressed in a paper that no effort to conserve biological diversity is realistic outside the economics and public policies that drive the modern world. So financial incentives may be necessary. And a perfect example of this is in 2002, the Republic of Ireland passed a 15-cent tax on plastic bags. Immediately, there was a 90% reduction in plastic bag use from that 15-cent. People thought, hey, if it's going to cost me something, I'll bring my own bag. America as a nation is so far behind, unfortunately, on the curve on this, the plastic bag pollution. In fact, 40 jurisdictions worldwide have already banned or imposed fees on single-use plastic bags. For example, Bangladesh, Belgium, China, Denmark, Germany, Hong Kong, Ireland, Kenya, Mexico City, Netherlands, New Delhi, India, South Africa, Taiwan have all imposed fees, taxes, or bans on plastic bags. And this is just amazing. And the population that has done this represents 25% of the population of the globe. So we just need to join them. It has been done. California has been a great environmental leader in so many ways, and we just totally kicked petroleum's butt on recently when they tried to take away our climate change regulations. And we have made some advances on plastic pollution here in California too. In fact, we discovered, thanks to Charles Moore and his foundation, Algalita, an answer to that nurdle problem. And we got legislation. What Charlie Moore's foundation did is they went out and they studied the manufacturing plants that weren't letting these nurdles escape. They came up with the best management practices and turned it into law. So now all the companies have to do those practices. We're also using the Clean Water Act here. We have what's called total maximum daily load restrictions, saying that zero trash is allowed to get into our LA River. Zero trash is allowed to go into the bay, and we enforce those. By 2015, you will get a huge penalty as a city if you're letting any trash get out into the water under the Clean Water Act. So there's existing laws that we can enforce. There's more laws that we need to borrow from the rest of the world, like extended producer responsibility. When a company has to take back their waste, they stop making it. They reduce the packaging. They don't try to take up as much shelf space. Also, green chemistry and the precautionary principle. Not putting chemicals out onto the market till we know they're safe. We worry about animal testing. Well, we are the guinea pigs here in America. It's tested on us, and we have to demand better. We have to get rid of those trade secrets that keep those poisons secret. And finally, we need to continue the educational process. That's the most important thing, to get people to be aware so that they can demand better laws, that they can demand enforcement of the laws that there are, and that they can take personal steps to reduce their own plastic pollution. And I just really want to thank you all for being here and contributing to this amazing discussion, because we all have a little part to share about the problem and ideas for the solution, and together we can definitely make it happen.